Hello, I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com and prisonprofessor.com. I am the host of the Earning Freedom podcast and also the Success After Prison podcast. I am just really excited to be sharing this story with you, particularly if you are viewing this or listening to this while you're inside of a prison or a jail, or if you're attending a school where you've been identified as possibly being vulnerable to going into the prison system, if you're on probation, or if you're going through any type of struggle. I mean, I did 26 years in prison, and I came back to society. Since I've come back, I can assure you I have seen people who are in a far bigger prison than I was ever in. Why? Because they're in a prison of their mind, and they don't know how to escape it. And that's what this show is about showing people how to escape and move beyond the challenges that you're facing today and into a life of prosperity and happiness and fulfillment and relevance. And in this particular show, I'm now giving you the 5th episode of my reading aloud the book, Success After Prison, How I Built Assets Worth $1 Million Within 2 years of release after 26 years inside, and more importantly, how you can succeed too. So I share this story because, as I said, I'm trying to get guys who are living in struggle or living without hope to recognize how the decisions they make today can have a direct influence on their prospects for success both where they are right now, and more importantly, success when they come home. And I've been reading these episodes reading this book in 20-minute episodes, roughly 20 minutes, releasing one every day or every couple of days so that people can follow along the stories. If you're driving in your car, you can just listen to it for free on iTunes. If you would like to get a free digital copy, really quite simple to do, just visit my website at michaelsantos.com or prisonprofessor.com and just enter my mailing list, and you'll automatically get one sent to your best email address. If you'd like to get a copy for your loved one inside who doesn't have access to the internet or doesn't have access to iTunes, you can order one through my website at michaelsantos.com, also on Amazon, of course. And a paperback copy of the book will be sent directly. My request to you is that you subscribe to the podcast, either Earning Freedom or Success After Prison. Just subscribe to the podcast so I can get more distribution and reach more people. Or very easily, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel so that more people will that's how the distribution gets made. If you're on Facebook, please like my Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, follow me at Michael G. Santos, because I got a lot of powerful information to share that can help you reach the next highest level regardless of what challenges you are going through right now. But let's move back to this episode of Success After Prison. I left off on the last episode talking about my strategy for reading books. I said that after every book that I read while I was incarcerated, I had to self-imposed write a book report that would follow a very deliberate strategy. It would describe the date that I read the book. It would describe what I learned from reading that book. It would describe why I chose that book. And then most importantly, it would describe how having read that book will contribute to my success upon release. That was a very deliberate strategy, kept me focused on reading the right type of literature, the type of literature that would advance me on to the success that I wanted to become. And it's a strategy that I suggest to those who are going through the Earning Freedom Mastermind course. You see, by adhering to that strategy, as I said, I read with a very deliberate purpose. Every decision had a direct connection to the success that I was determined to become. And there were opportunity costs and risks associated with every decision in prison. Since I knew that many people in prison placed a high value on where they positioned their seat in the movie room, on whether they had the authority to change a channel in the TV room. I mean, because I knew that, I didn't judge it. I just said, I got to avoid television rooms. I've got to avoid table games. In fact, every decision I make in prison began with a question. Again, going back to Socratic questioning. If I choose to watch television, will that decision advance or hinder my prospects for success upon release? If I play organized sports, will that decision advance or hinder my prospects for success upon release? If I play table games, Will that decision advance or hinder my prospects for success upon release? If I associate with one person or another, will that decision advance or hinder my prospects for success upon release? If I participate in this program, will that decision advance or hinder my prospects for success upon release? I mean, there's just no limit to the number of questions you can ask. If I express my opinion in a given group, will that decision advance or hinder my prospects for success upon release? All of these questions would help guide my decisions. And I hope that you are asking questions today that will really help you identify or crystallize the path that you need to be on to transition from wherever you are, whatever struggle you're going through, that will help you transition into a life of success and meaning and relevance. As you define success, not as I define success, but as you define success. That's what masterminds teach us. Learned it from Gandhi, learned it from Socrates, learned it from Mandela, learned it from Dostoevsky, learned it from Steve Jobs, from Bill Gates, from Jack Welch, from a countless number of people. They all advise us to define success. And once we define success, reverse engineer. What is it going to take to get me from where I am today to where I want to go tomorrow? And if I can crack that code, if I can figure that out, that's what's going to make the difference. That's what's going to move the needle in my life. Each question must have a purpose. Rather than making decisions that would ease my journey through prison, enhance my reputation in prison, or advance my standing with others in prison, I considered my avatars. I didn't know those avatars. I didn't know who they were, and they didn't know me. But each one of those avatars was alive in my mind, and they were real. So I could consider those people with whom I wanted to associate in the future. And then I could contemplate whether a decision would make their support more likely or less likely. As long as my decisions followed that principled pathway, I felt as if I were empowering myself. And when I empowered myself, I didn't feel like I was serving multiple decades in prison. Instead, I felt as if each decision I made was advancing my prospects for success, as if each decision represented a new investment that would bring success, that would bring a return on investment. I wasn't perfect. Of course I wasn't perfect. I made some bad decisions along the way. Yet adhering to the strategy I described it, adhering to it always helped me get back on track. Now, are you beginning to visualize how this same strategy can help you? It doesn't matter what you're going through today. It doesn't matter what bad decisions you made yesterday. It doesn't matter, what circumstances put you into the situation that you're in right now. To the extent that you begin embracing this disciplined, deliberate approach to success, you change your life. And it doesn't only advance for you, it advances for the people you love and the people who love you. Not too long ago, I was giving a presentation. Now, it's still mid-January, but last week, I was inside the United States Penitentiary in Atwater, and I asked the guy who he would like to see him as something strong, or something better. And he said his daughter. Made all the sense in the world, his daughter. Well, if you want to do something for your daughter, or your wife, or your father, or your mother, or your grandmother, or yourself, begin asking the questions. What is it going to take? Look back. Identify what you did yesterday, what you did last week. What will it take you to do differently so that you can change your outcome? Don't wait for the prison system to do it. Don't wait for legislators to do it. Don't wait for a judge to do it. What can you do? That's my question for you. That's the question that masterminds ask. That's what I learned. That's what made all the difference for me. And that's what I'm sharing with you. And as I said in every video, I will never ask you to do anything that I did not do while I was crossing through 9,500 days in prison. I won't ask you to do one thing that I didn't do since I've come back to society and started building my path to the first million. Later in this course, Get through this first chapter. You're going to hear about my life after prison, but you need this backstory so that you understand how significant our decisions today, how significant they are in influencing a better outcome tomorrow. So we moving on to this book, I got to go to the end game. During my final years of imprisonment, I can tell you that I knew that I wanted to build a career around my journey. I needed to build products that would communicate a message. Specifically, I wanted to document the journey so that others could see how to sustain energy and discipline over a long period of time and how they could focus in the short term. I wanted to create my own tools to teach others. Now, I got a little sideline story. Good God, I only have 20 minutes on these episodes, so I keep going off in tangents. This book's going to take me a little longer to read, but I got to tell it to you. So I just said that I had to create this recipe, right? And I wanted to build a career around my journey. And I remember telling that to one of my mentors, and I speak about him a little bit later in this book. His name is Lee, and Lee is a very extremely successful businessman. I'll tell you, when he came to visit me, I was in the federal prison in Taft, California, and I told him that I wanted to do this. I remember him asking me, well, how are you going to do it? And I told him about this story that I just read. It was actually a book by Susie Welch, the wife of Jack Welch, who's really a legendary CEO. He was the former chief executive officer of General Electric and really well-known business leader. And his wife, Susie, wrote a book. It was called 10-10-10. And what she said in 10-10-10 was that we need to think about our decisions, how they will influence our life in the next 10 minutes, in the next 10 months, and in the next 10 years. And it made a lot of sense to me. That's what I was telling Lee. I said, that made a lot of sense because, while I'm in prison, sometimes you can get involved in an altercation and you can say something wrong, and then 10 minutes later, you're in the lieutenant's office and you're on your way to the SHU. How does that affect me 10 months later? Maybe I'm going to higher security. Maybe I'm not able to complete my school program, whatever. And if I don't do that, what's going to happen in my life 10 years from now? See, all these decisions, they have an implication. They have an influence. There's an opportunity cost. There's a threat. In business management, they call it a SWOT analysis. Identify your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats. Figure out how every decision relates to something else. And I wanted to create coursework around that. And Lee told me, he said, well, that's awesome, but you got to create your own 10-10-10. You can't be building a career around Susie Welch. And he was right. And a little bit later, I'll tell you about how I developed that. And some readers may be familiar with a lot of the self-help literature out there. And I'll go back to reading right now. From my perspective, self-help literature reveals a similar recipe. It's all the same. You see, people who succeed, they follow a pattern. The stories of Socrates began revealing that pattern more than 2,500 years ago. But the Bible told those same stories more than 2,000 years ago. And, the Quran tells those stories. And the book of Buddhism, they tell those stories. And books of philosophy tell those stories. I mean, ever since the printed word began conveying ideas, we've been seeing these patterns. We've seen them over time, that the journey of life is a struggle. That's just reality. And it doesn't stop. It doesn't matter whether someone is in prison or someone is struggling in life back out here in society. The one constant is struggle. And there's always going to be more struggle. And there's always a pathway through struggle. Authors have written about that pathway in self-help literature since the beginning of the printed word, since before there was a printed word. We read that message through the work of many, many masterminds. As I said, for me, those masterminds included Mahatma Gandhi. In fact, a lot of my work is about what I learned from Gandhi. He says we want to strive to be the change that we see in the world. I'm not asking you to do anything that I don't do every day. I'm trying to be the change that I want to see in the world, and I'm inviting you, join me. Be the change you want to see in the world. Don't wait for a second chance act. Make your own second chance by the work that you do. Look at Viktor Frankl, another mastermind, wrote about it in his work, A Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl really endured struggle. watched his family executed in front of him. But he had always had a high level of energy and discipline. Why? Because he had a purpose. He knew what he wanted. He knew how to create meaning from within. Nelson Mandela, a man who endured indescribable indignity and suffering and struggle, despite not having even committed a crime. But when he came back to society after 27 years, no anger, no animosity, no sense of loss, just a sense of, I want to contribute. I want to build a meaningful life. And that's why the world reveres Nelson Mandela as a leader, as a portrait of strength for mankind. You see it in Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the author of that famous book, A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, but his famous one, The Gulag Archipelago. We see it in Martin Luther King, a man who's totally believed that the world outside was more important than his own life. I mean, that's what living is all about. That's what overcoming struggle is about. That's what we learn from masterminds. It's to think bigger than ourselves. Whatever we're doing, whether it's business, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it's personal relationships, think bigger. Think outside. Think of the avatars. As Howard Schultz, the chairman of Starbucks, says, when you think you're thinking bigger, think bigger. You see, we see this message of mastermind message in people who haven't personally struggled, but we also see it in people who have struggled. When we study struggle and we figure out ways to overcome, that's when we begin finding the key to really personal empowerment, self-empowerment. Work that makes this truism self-evident includes the writings of Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, in Joel Osteen, in Anthony Robbins. We see the message in the work of Jack Welch, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. It doesn't matter. If someone is a leader, they are living that message. And what is the message? Leaders begin by clearly defining success. Leaders begin by contemplating the pain or the challenge they're experiencing at a given time, and they contemplate steps to a better outcome. Visualize, plan, execute. They create that plan that will lead them to success, and then they execute that plan relentlessly. That is the path that I'm striving to communicate to my brothers in prison, to my brothers in struggle. I want you to come out. I want you to find the way, and I want you to truly succeed. Not mediocrity. I want you to truly succeed. I only have about 2 more minutes left in this episode, so let me just see if I've got to scroll down this book a little bit. Now, this is probably a good place to break it and just close off with a couple of other thoughts. When you're living in this challenge, I want you to look around. I want you to listen to the people who are giving you guidance, and then go back and lie down and introspect and think, is that guidance good? Is it true that you've got nothing coming? Or can you create something coming out of nothing? Are there resources around you that you can tap into? I mean, I can tell you, when I was in prison and I used to teach these types of courses, and I'd advise people to really look for the resources that will help them advance their life. A lot of times they say, well, there's nothing here. But the reality is there's always something there. If I'm to ask you what's 2 + 3, I know that in a half a second I'm going to get the answer. The answer is 5. That's right. So you can learn a little bit of math, arithmetic, but let me ask you something. If you can pick up that GED book that's inside of a prison shelf somewhere there, and if you can master every math problem in that book, will that make you stronger? Will that make you a better candidate for employment? Will that knowledge open opportunities that you can leverage and create more opportunities? That's the message that I have tried to convey, that you always have an opportunity to take resources and use those resources to build new strengths. When I was in prison, I told you in the previous episode about my publishing and writing. Where did I get that information? I got it from my brothers in prison. I'd ask them their story. I'd tell their story. I'd write their story. And what did I do? What did I gain by doing that, by taking that approach? I became a more confident writer. I became a more confident communicator. I became more powerful, or developed more confidence in my ability to persuade other people to believe in me. Not because I said I wanted to do better, but because I could show that I wanted to do better. I'd love to say that was my strategy, but the reality is it is a strategy that I learned from masterminds. It's a strategy I learned from Nelson Mandela, from Viktor Frankl, from Socrates, from so many other people. And it's what I want to reach out and convey to those who are listening to this program. So that comes us to the end of this episode. Again, I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com, prisonprofessor.com. I host the Earning Freedom podcast. I hope that you will support the program by subscribing to the podcast, by leaving a review on the podcast so that it'll get more distribution. I hope that you will subscribe to my channel on YouTube. I hope that you will like my Facebook page, follow me on Twitter at Michael G. Santos. I am totally transparent and authentic because I want other people to know that I believe in the message that I am delivering. I'm terribly passionate about it because it changed my life while I was in prison. It opened opportunities for me since I came back to society, and it's what I want to share with you. So I hope you stick with me. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com. I think I covered all the plugs that I needed to do for my social media. But again, just hit me up at michaelsantos.com. Sign up on the newsletter. You can get a free digital download of my book, How to Succeed. Success After Prison, and how, whatever. You know what it is. I've said it a couple of times. Hey, Michael Santos, I love you. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Success After Prison. Thanks.